All right, I'll call the meeting to order. I have a roll call when you're ready.
Mr. Ackerson,
Here.
Mr. Allred,
Here.
Ms. Billman,
Here.
Mr. Fell, Mr. Fitch,
Here.
Mr. Hopkins, Mr. Weiskopf, and Ms. Yu.
Here.
We have a quorum. Are there any changes to the agenda?
No.
Approval of the minutes, the regular Plan Commission meeting on September 19th, 2019. Have any motions? We could do it, we usually do it after the motions if there's so.
I move approval of the minutes.
Mr. Hopkins moves approval. Second, Mr. Ackerson. Any changes to the minutes?
Two for me. One minor one is I was talking about having visited Juneau, Alaska, and Juneau is misspelled in there. It's E-A-N's in E-A-U, G-U-N-E-A-u,
I
not
thought it was-
G-U-N, J-U-N-O.
Y-O-U-K-N-O-W.
Yeah. The other is, as we're talking about, the locations and concerns about schools, I voiced that I was specifically concerned about pass to school for middle school and high school, not necessarily K through 8 or K through 5. So I just wanted to make sure that was. I think that came right before the comment about uni.
Talking of the university and uni high?
Yeah. That knocks out kind of the northern part of the university area, but I did
Which is
want.
on the bottom of page 6, somewhere in that vicinity.
Right. I just wanted to make sure that comment
Okay.
about middle school and high school is my main concern.
I've got
Okay.
one thing, which is just a typo on the first page. The last sentence of point 3, the minutes were approved by unanimous vote, I think it should say there, as written.
Yeah, that works.
All right. All those in favor of approving the minutes as amended?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The minutes are approved as amended. Okay, do we have any communications? Don't believe we do. Continued public hearings. Plan Case 2359T18, application by the zoning administrator to amend Article 2, Article 5, Article 6 of the zoning ordinance and other relevant sections to facilitate solar energy system installation. Case continued to the October 24th, 2019 meeting. Cases 2018 A03 and 2360 M18, proposed annexation agreement between the City of Urbana and Henry Merkelo, rezoning County R5 Manufactured Home Park to City R1 Single Family Residential for a 1.01 acre parcel at 2218 East University Avenue in Urbana. That case is continued to the December 5th, 2019 meeting of the Plan Commission. Plan Case 2383T19, application by the zoning administrator to amend the subdivision and land development ordinance and create a manual of practice. Case continued to October 24th, 2019, regular meeting. And now we have Plan Case 2385T19, an application by the zoning administrator to amend the zoning ordinance to add definition and regulations for recreational cannabis. Mr. Garcia.
Okay, good evening. So as you'll recall at the last Plan Commission meeting on September 19th, there were a number of questions raised about the proposed text amendment. So we provided a supplemental memorandum to the Plan Commission, and I'm going to go through that tonight, and then we can discuss. So the major concerns at the last meeting really dealt with where cannabis dispensaries and cultivation centers could be located. The Plan Commission indicated that dispensaries should be set back some distance from schools, specifically K through 12 schools. There was also some questions on how we should determine those distances, whether conditional use permits or by right would be used, or some combination of the two would be used as well. The commission also suggested that we look at the city's requirements for liquor stores as a basis for establishing rules for dispensaries. So we've done that and provided some info in your memo on that. And then also there was some confusion on the total number of dispensaries that would be allowed in the region. The act is kind of confusing, but I was able to go through and parse that out and determine how many dispensaries should be allowed in our region. And then finally, and then on the other side, with respect to cultivation centers, the main concern seemed to be how close they would be to residential areas. The main concern, I think, was odors from the cultivation centers and how those might be a nuisance for residences. So we also explored that. Starting off, regarding the number of dispensaries, so the state is broken up into different BLS regions, which are regions that the Bureau of Labor Statistics uses for various statistics. So the Act has broken down the state using those same regions. You can see them in the map on the screen in front of you. The Champaign-Urbana region consists of Champaign, Piatt, and Ford counties. Champaign County has the vast majority of population. Champaign County has about 210,000 people, so the other two counties have about 30,000 between the two. So our region has around 240,000 people. It's just under 2%. It's 1.88% of the state's population. So based on the numbers in the Act, ultimately there could be 9 dispensaries in the region. The Act sort of ramps up the number of dispensaries that can be allowed. First, as we discussed last time, all of the existing, the 55 existing medical cannabis dispensaries could apply for what turns out to be a temporary license, which would expire in early 2022. But in the meantime, they can apply for one of the permanent licenses. I'm guessing that the state did that because the medical cannabis regions were based on state police districts. And so those didn't really align with the BLS regions that they're using now. So I think over time they were trying to they wanted to allow the medical cannabis dispensaries to open non-medical dispensaries as well, but I think they wanted to phase that out so that they would then all of the permanent non-medical dispensaries would all be within these BLS regions. So the first round would be 75 licenses that would open in January of 2020. Then there's a second round of 110 licenses, which opens in January of 2021. And then there's a final round that opens in January of 2022 that never closes. But the Act does specify that the maximum number of dispensaries in the entire state can never be more than 500. So if just based on our current population, granted that could change a little bit over time, but as it stands now, that would be between 9 and 10 dispensaries. It's 9.4, so that either rounds down, or I suppose they could round it up. But at most, we'd be looking at 9 to 10 dispensaries in the region. Like I said, a little bit confusing, but hopefully that synopsis made it more clear. With respect to liquor stores, we looked at the city code, and it turns out the city code just relies on the state of Illinois' statute, which states that, or which prohibits retail sales of alcohol within 100 feet of churches, non-higher education schools, so preschool through high school, hospitals, nursing homes, veterans homes, and military bases. The city doesn't impose any additional distance requirements for liquor stores beyond these state requirements. So if the cannabis dispensaries were to follow a similar path to the distance required for liquor stores, we'd be looking at 100-foot distance. And then in the memo I said from K to 12 schools, since that seemed to be what the Plan Commission was going for. So in Exhibit K, and I've cleaned this up a little bit, and I've got zoomed in versions, but Exhibit K that came along with your with the supplemental memo showed all of the schools in Urbana, and I guess in Champaign as well, and had some different buffers around them. So first is 100-foot buffers. This is a little bit zoomed in. So the 100-foot buffers you can see on the map and in your exhibit. So those are right around the school parcels. Those would, as I said, those would match what is required for liquor stores. I also included some buffers. Well, in the printed, or sorry, in the original memo that was sent out, they're at 100-foot increments. But I cleaned that up to just show a 500-foot buffer here and a 1,000-foot buffer here, so you can get an idea of how many parcels would be would be affected by those various buffers. And I can go through any of these during the discussion if you'd like, or when you have questions for me. Also, in your memo, I don't have it here in the presentation, but in your memo, as an example, I added liquor stores, I added from the table of uses the liquor store requirements, and they're similar to what we're proposing for cannabis dispensaries. Liquor stores are allowed in all of the higher business zones. They're allowed as a conditional use permit in the B2 neighborhood business arterial zone. We're not proposing that for dispensaries because they probably would see a higher level of traffic than just a typical liquor store, so it's probably not appropriate for a smaller neighborhood business zone, but we can certainly explore that option. And then finally, with respect to cultivation centers, I looked at the numbers for these as well. It's good information to have. So there are currently 21 cultivation centers in Illinois. As with dispensaries, the Act allows each cultivation center operator to apply for a license to grow non-medical cannabis as well. The Act also states that at most there could be 30 cultivation centers in Illinois. So assuming that the 21 existing medical cultivation centers will apply for and obtain licenses to grow non-medical cannabis, the entire state would only have 9 more cultivation centers. So they're not going to be, there won't be a proliferation of these, of cultivation centers. But on the off chance that one of those 9 wanted to locate in Urbana, it makes sense to set some rules for those. So for these, in your exhibit, I highlighted, here we go. So I looked at all residential zones in the city, and then here's a zoomed in version sort of on the north side of Urbana. Wanted to look at 300-foot buffers. I also included on this map 1,000-foot buffers, just for additional information. And so we chose 300 because that is what the city of Aurora, Colorado uses, and they were cited in a Planning Magazine article about cannabis as having some of the, I'd say some of the, I don't know if I'd say the most strict, but some of the most thought out rules for cultivation centers. So Aurora requires a 300-foot buffer from residential uses for cultivation centers. So on this map, I've highlighted a 300-foot buffer. Also, Aurora has some ordinance language, which I didn't include in the memo, but I've added here, so I'm just going to jump to that right now. So they have, in their ordinance, they have what they call best management practices. And So the best management practices, this is a lot of words on the screen, but they deal with, let's see. Okay, so I'll just read it. So it says best management practices are mitigation measures applied to retail marijuana cultivation facilities to promote the cultivation of marijuana in an environmentally sensitive manner. Licensed retail marijuana cultivation facilities are required to employ best management practices to ensure mitigation of land use impacts from such facilities on the surrounding area, including but not limited to the installation of air scrubbing and filtration systems. Like I said, that's a lot of words. The state act actually goes into a lot of detail for cultivation centers for doing environmentally friendly best practices. So for HVAC systems, for irrigation systems, for lighting, and for water filtration at the end of it. So if we were to add similar language to our zoning ordinance, I don't think we would need to include a lot of language about environmentally sensitive best management practices because the state act already covers that. But what this doesn't do is actually talk about odor. So I'm just going to cut to the recommended language. So if you look at number 4 here, just some language that we came up with that might work if we want to talk about mitigating odors. It says cannabis cultivation centers and craft growers shall mitigate exterior odors by installing air scrubbing and or air filtration systems or by some other means approved by the zoning administrator. We added that last caveat because we don't know, we are not cannabis cultivators, so we don't know what they might be able to do to mitigate odors coming out of their facilities. So if there happens to be some other way besides air scrubbers or air filtration systems, we'd like to leave it open to that. So the memo, the supplementary memo that we provided to you didn't actually include updated recommendations, but the updated recommendations are essentially what you see on the screen here. So everything in black was the previously proposed language, but to that we've added the 100-foot buffer from public or private elementary or secondary schools, and then also a 300-foot buffer for cultivation centers around residential zones. We can change those numbers, of course, based on discussion, but I think the final language would look something like what's in front of you. Before I wrap up and take questions, I did want to make a note. So we did discuss, last time we talked about by right, conditional use permits, special use permits, and how all that might work. Did just want to note that there are other communities without conditional use permits, so they only have special use permits, and they are considering using special use permits. But in Urbana, we do have conditional use permits. So that's if we were to go that route instead of just saying certain things are allowed by right, we would recommend using conditional use permits, as that's what the statute says, and that's the most legally defensible way to regulate. And just one final note. I know we mentioned this last time, but I did want to just reiterate, we're not talking about the public consumption spaces, so no smoking lounges or anything. We expect that discussion could be a much larger discussion, so we're not entertaining that at this time. So just wanted to restate that point. But I think that wraps up my my presentation, and I can take questions.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. Any questions for Mr. Garcia? Ms. Billman?
Was there some place where it talked about certain number of feet from daycare? as well? Because this doesn't. I'm thinking someplace we read that.
Yeah, so that's, you are not mistaken. In our existing medical cannabis language in the zoning ordinance, we do talk about daycares, and that's because that's what the state required at the time, so we put that into our zoning ordinance.
But the supplement
Yeah.
says, I mean, it's fine however you do it, but it's not the same.
Well, so the state doesn't require, for non-medical cannabis, the state doesn't require any distance from daycares, so that's why none of this
Okay.
talks about daycares.
Mr. Garcia, could you go back to the exhibits?
I
Because
can.
it's
Yeah.
considerably easier to read than the one that I've got.
Yeah.
Um,
If there
So
are,
go back to K first, and we'll
Okay.
take a look at this. So these,
Let's
these,
see.
the orange
I'll
is
just start
100
at the big
feet.
one. Yeah.
The middle line is 500, and the green one is 1,000.
Correct.
And could you then zoom in on NewMed?
Yeah, let's
And the
see.
1,500-foot
I might
buffer.
actually not have. Well, that's pretty good. But let me just do. I think I can zoom on this one.
There you are.
Okay, that's as far
So the
as I can go on
1,500-foot
this.
buffer is where no other dispensary can locate.
Correct.
So the rest of downtown practically is out, except for maybe this little area over here, which there, it's hard to see what street it is. It's probably Lincoln Square.
Yeah. So most of Lincoln Square. Well, actually, since
It's close.
yeah, and since the state talks about it's parcel line to parcel line, and Lincoln Square's parcel is very
So it
large.
tags
So
it, yeah.
it's Lincoln
The
Square.
1,000-foot would tag
Lincoln
it.
Square is probably out. So
Well,
when
the
I
1,000-foot would tag it. It looks like the 300. Ooh, it's close, right? I don't
Yeah.
know. And the 100 to be okay. But so the first consideration for me, anyway, is NewMed because it's already there and it's going to get a license. So it looks like with any of those three choices as to buffer away from schools, that NewMed would be.
Yeah, NewMed is well outside of that, and I suppose that's because they had to be 1,500 feet based on
At the time, probably,
Yeah, based
yeah.
on the medical rules.
Okay, so I guess with any of these, well, I'll leave it for discussion. I just wanted to understand what we were looking at, and the same goes for then the if you go to L.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially, the only places we're talking about is industrial here, and we're just talking residential here and not schools too?
Well, so we could
I mean,
include.
there's no schools.
Yeah, we could include schools, but if you see a lot of the white squares on here in the middle of town are where schools are.
Yeah.
So it's kind of by default this includes.
Yeah, so
some
you're
school.
talking about the two big industrial areas, really.
Mostly, and I know last time I had pointed out sort of this area, and I think I can zoom in.
Along University?
Yeah, so along University. But like I stated in the supplementary memo, I think that since there will only be 9 more cultivation centers, they're really going to want to be on
Be big ones. That's what I
very
think,
large
yeah.
properties, and none of these are really that. I guess the one piece that's south of Dart,
Yeah.
right here, it is just a big field. So if you wanted to either include or exclude that based on buffers, I suppose you could consider that. It does look like that is, so that is within 300 feet
Yeah, it's got the encroachment.
of these residential areas.
Yeah. So it'll probably be out. Okay, I just wanted to kind of understand what was in and what was out
Yeah.
under the various proposals. Any further questions for Mr. Garcia? Mr. Atkerson?
I just want to clarify, so for the craft, not the big cultivation centers, but the craft grower, the proposed regulations are pretty much the same as for dispensaries. Is that correct? Or am I reading it wrong?
them in with, cultivation centers, actually.
Let me take a look. Whoops. Yeah, I don't think,
The table's confusing to me because there's several lines that run together or run
oh.
below, so.
So, you mean in the table of uses?
Because what I remember is you talked about New Med likely will be a craft grower.
Yeah, I think
And-
they
and
want to
then-
open a craft grower.
And then trying to
growing.
think of any other, I think what I'm thinking about is more likely in town, anywhere in the general vicinity of a residential area, you're much more likely to find a craft grower than you are a large cultivation center. So that's what I'm trying to figure out.
And I think, so with the proposed language that you see on the screen, number 4, the reason that I included craft growers in there is because they might have some, if they were close to a residential area. Oh, sorry, I guess number 3 talks about craft growers being 300 feet. Okay.
Yes.
So I suppose you wouldn't have to include craft growers there if that's your concern.
Or we could have a different. All right. Any further questions for Mr. Garcia? Mr. Allred?
So in the text of the memo, and you mentioned that it may be appropriate to have cannabis dispensaries in B2 neighborhood commercial, but in the table it's not, and you would recommend that it would be a conditional use permit, but in the table it's not listed. So is that just something you're putting out there for us to discuss, or is there a recommendation that goes along with that?
Yeah, I think it's kind of up in the air, because as I said during my presentation, they would probably have a lot more traffic than like a liquor store, which is allowed with a conditional use permit in B2. So I think that's why if we were to allow it there, I think a conditional use permit would be appropriate, because then you could ask questions about how much traffic they might be generating and, and not disrupt the neighborhood.
Any further questions? Ms. Yu?
On the page you are presenting here, item number 1, when it says you cannot be within 150 feet of the property line of a pre-existing dispensary, is it a pre-existing consumer dispensary or medical dispensary or both?
Well, I think it would be both, but and since this came directly from the state act, I'm assuming they're talking about both, and since they don't specify, I think we could interpret that as being any dispensary. That's the interpretation I would make.
Okay, just want to get clarification on that part.
Yeah.
Further questions? All right. Well, thank you very much, Mr.
Okay,
Garcia.
thanks.
There will be no public input, I don't believe. So we'll go into discussion and possibly entertain some motions.
Would you like me to stay here if you want to talk about maps or anything? I can.
Sure, if you want to stay there and if we have further questions as we go.
Okay. Or I can get some exercise going back and forth. Why don't we do it like that?
It's up
Let's
to
do it
you.
like that.
Do you want to be, yeah.
Is there a preferred map you'd like me to leave up? I'll put the first one.
Let's start with the
Like,
dispensaries
So,
first.
Okay.
In light of that, is the language that we're talking about the language we had plus what you put on the screen? What's actually before us?
Yeah, the
now?
language isn't in the memo that I can tell.
no, it's not. But I did want to provide some as food for thought. So,
Okay, so this language, if we are going to include, needs to be incorporated by an amendment or something?
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify.
okay.
Yeah, I think that's right. Okay, so the distance, so are we, first of all, the zoning districts, are we okay with the zoning districts? Do we want to allow anything in regards to dispensaries in B2? The table of uses and the permitted and conditional uses are on page 2 of the memo. So you're talking craft growers, cultivation centers, conditional use in the ag district. And I think that's a little change from last time because I think craft growers were not permitted in, at all in the ag. And after, Ms., you made the comment, and so I appreciate that change, I think. And then we've got permitted uses of craft growers, dispensaries, and infusers in the business districts with a star for diffusers that are bigger than a certain size in B3U and B4. We've got permitted uses in 2 of the business districts for, medical. We don't need to worry about medical. That's not a change. Although it is underscored, but I think that's just, it's only underscored because you're breaking it out into a different section, right?
Correct.
Okay. Craft growers and cultivation centers in, and infusers, processors, and transporters in all industrial districts. Dispensaries and infusers only in the light industrial. So, I guess if, personally, I think it's good. I don't know if anybody has a thought about the B2. I think we can leave it out of the B2.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out where B2 is.
There's some right on Main, along Main, just east of Schnucks, where Ray's Heating and Air and the car detailing shop, and a couple of other businesses there.
Yeah, I think I may have mentioned in the memo, but the highest concentrations are really on Springfield, between Cedar and Busey, so going west from downtown. And then also there's, I don't know, 9 or 10 on the north side of Main Street, east of downtown, between Weber and Poplar or Cottage Grove.
So, to jump the gun because it's relevant on the future, one of the emails that I got from campus, they still send me stuff, was a reminder that the campus, because of its relationship to federal funding, is continuing to operate under and claims to be enforcing federal regulations, which means that possession of marijuana on campus or in relation to any university activity on campus is illegal. And I think one of the things that's going to potentially create is that the question of whatever you want to call them, smoking lounges, that is, places where students can smoke across the street from the campus that are not owned by the campus, might be in demand as quickly as January 2nd. And presumably, those are going to want to be in association with dispensaries.
My understanding is the state is still working on their regulations for those kinds of facilities, that they have not yet passed those. So it couldn't happen in January, but maybe January the following year.
Well, whenever it happens,
Well,
yeah.
my point is that de facto, if there's a dispensary, there is going to be smoking or
It's
consumption.
highly likely to be, yeah.
And the university is not going to enforce it, but the university can't say it's not going to enforce it.
Sure.
So the reason it comes up at this point is B2 along Springfield is one of the locations closest to campus in which Urbana dispensaries could be located.
If we
and-
allow it, yeah.
If we allow it.
Yeah.
What about Tim Ponies section?
That's like that's
Well-
it's not B2.
What, Tim Ponies,
I forget what that area is. It's like University
It's B4,
B4.
so it's
okay, so it'd be permitted there.
correct, yeah.
Yeah, okay. I'm just bringing it up in terms of the B2 question. That is, do we want to allow it at all? Do we want to? And maybe there's enough other, I mean, I was focusing on where B2 was, not what the other options were. I guess my reaction is the only reason to allow it in B2 would be if we wanted to take that into account. Otherwise, my inclination would be not to.
I agree. Now, I had asked last time about a buffer around the university. And I'd still kind of be inclined to do that. And we could fold that in with the K through 12. Now,
Well,
the university's like an octopus, so I don't know what the implications of that would be.
If we're basing the, say, the 100-foot buffer on what is done for liquor stores, what would the
Then
rationale
so far,
be?
we're at 100 foot, yeah,
Yeah.
if that's from the liquor code, but
But-
we'll probably talk about that, too.
No, but I'm just curious, what would the rationale be then? Since we don't do that sort of buffer for the university for liquor stores, why would it make sense to do that for cannabis dispensaries?
I don't know, I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah, no, I'm just,
Yeah, I mean, CAMS was remarkably close to campus for, for a long time, and as are many other establishments. So maybe it's not a problem. I think it's more of a problem to Lou's point when you get to the cafes, maybe, because of the federal law question.
well, dynamics matter here. The federal law is not going to last
Probably not.
in practice, if not in de jure. And the demand is going to be on campus.
If I would had one, I'd want it on
And-
Green Street.
And part of the reason we're doing this is so that Urbana might get
Sure.
some of these because of the tax benefits. So what I'm trying to think through is where, not just with what's happening now, but where this is going to go in 2 or 3 years, do we want to allow them? And it appears that the intersection of Green and Lincoln is actually B2 as well, which seems odd to me.
Yeah, that is kind of weird, but there's two
But
gas
that-
stations?
If my, the corner of Nevada and Lincoln appears to be B2 as well.
Yeah, that's Paradiso and,
Yeah, Paradiso
Yeah.
appears to be B2 as well.
That's actually B1. It's a little lighter color than the salmon. Or
Oh, it's, so Paradiso is B1.
yeah, and so
Okay,
is
well-
so are the gas stations
That
at
becomes even more extreme, because Paradiso is probably Urbana's best chance to get a
Pop Bar.
cafe.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point.
well. So again, we're not talking about cafes at this point.
Yeah, but
so,
I think it's
but
like
that's
room for
good.
thinking.
The point
Yeah.
is,
Yeah.
there's a limited number of dispensaries. Dispensaries have to be 1,500 feet apart. Okay? If dispensaries are the obvious location for cafes, once cafes are permitted, right? I mean, I don't understand how you could have a cafe. Well, you
Well, you
can.
can't have packaged,
They're
it's like
different- Yeah,
packaged
there's
liquor.
packaged liquors. You could do it, but
Yeah.
the likelihood that they're going to be associated. because they have to be 1,500 feet apart at the moment.
I hope these types of questions are what the state will be addressing when they come in with the with the clarification for the on-site consumption, because one would think that you would be able to purchase things for consumption right there, and you wouldn't have to say buy it from a dispensary next door and then come into the place, but we don't know.
Sure, but I mean, I think he's talking about the attractiveness of, if you're an owner, having both. And the attractiveness of that particular corner as a good spot, right?
So, yeah, I'm trying to think, what are we up to? And how does that affect the zoning table? So,
Yeah.
I think, and your recommendation was that if we were going to allow it in B2, that it be a conditional use, correct? For dispensaries, and I'm only thinking of dispensaries at the moment, not even craft growers. What if we also permitted it in B1?
As a conditional use?
But it would have to be
Potentially, yeah.
a conditional use. It might even be a special use, but I think it'd be a conditional use.
I think our legal team is recommending conditional use permits only, because they don't think that special use are allowed.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, that's fine.
And I didn't get the full, but that's what I inferred you were getting at. So,
I guess for me, I'm trying not to think yet about the cafes, because it will really depend how they write that, because there's more ways to consume besides smoking.
yes,
So if Timponi's decides to start offering food that's infused with marijuana, like a number of restaurants might, they would want that, and they're not anywhere near a dispensary, but they're in a prime location.
right.
They are.
I mean, I could see folks from Cranard going over there and having a nice meal with a little something, and then going, just like having a glass of wine, and going into a concert.
Yeah.
So that's, I
I
understand.
confess we don't know,
Yeah,
but
Yeah.
I'm trying
They're
to
interesting
think
questions.
yeah,
about,
yeah.
um,
But
in
I
part,
can-
I'm trying to think of why do we not want it in B1?
yeah.
What's actually the point?
I would favor B2 with a conditional use. I'm also okay with not having it B2, but I think putting the conditional use makes you feel okay about if people do want to do it, they have to come and make a case, right?
Sure.
And then you're treating it the same as you are liquor stores. But we don't even allow liquor stores in B1, so I wouldn't put them in B1.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I think my ranch, that's a reason not to. And we
Yeah.
can change it later.
No, but it's a good discussion.
Yeah,
I think one of the things we wanted to do was be consistent with liquor, the way liquor's treated, and so that
Well,
makes sense.
yeah.
Um,
So conditional in B2 is my reaction.
you
I don't know
should-
where we were.
You're in favor of conditional in B2?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, that would be like a liquor store. I'm okay with that. Anybody else? Okay. So I guess we've got the zoning districts lined out. We're okay with this, with the addition of conditional dispensary in B2. All right. Now the buffer. So if you could, when you get a second, go back to K. Oh, that's why you wanted to go over there. Stay over there. Yeah, this is much easier to read. So New Med is in. We'll probably get one more in the first round, maybe end up with 2 or 3
You're talking about dispensaries.
dispensaries.
Specifically.
Yeah, this is the one specifically for dispensaries. Probably end up with 2 or 3 eventually, maybe 4. That's probably more than we'll get. We'll probably end up with 2 or 3. It looks to me like even with the 1,000-foot buffer, there's plenty of interesting places to put a dispensary. Now, the 1,000-foot buffer knocks out several of the properties we were just talking about. I think 100, I mean, in the B2, right? Along Springfield? I'm thinking a 100-foot buffer probably knocking out.
100 feet is 2 lots.
Right.
in the
That's what I'm
state.
talking about.
100 feet is
Nothing.
irrelevant. In Pennsylvania, it's 1 lot.
Yeah, could be, big enough.
Um,
So essentially, the B2, the whole B2 discussion that we just had, depending on how we draw the buffer, it could almost be moot. There's a few down here
Well-
on,
Wait a minute, if we drew only if we drew the 1,000-foot buffer, right?
well, even, if you look at the B2 on West Main, there's residential all around it.
Wait a minute, are we talking residential or schools? This is
Oh, schools, that's right, okay, never mind. I was getting confused.
It would appear that 500 would not cut anything out and would be potentially a useful message. Almost symbolic as much as anything else.
Yeah, I kind of think 100's too close and 1,000's
Yep.
too far.
I agree.
And I don't, I mean, there's one, what is that, King's School would, at 500, would affect
It would knock out that one, yeah,
the one parcel. And I guess my reaction is, good,
yeah,
because it's actually adjacent to the school.
right. I agree with you. But you've got the whole of University Avenue looks good, pretty much.
What's up by the interstate?
Cunningham, you'd have some places on Cunningham, you could do it if the
I think I
500 foot.
zoomed in a little bit on that, yeah.
I'm just thinking from a business perspective, your 2 biggest draws are either going to be something close to the university or something close to the interstate.
Yep, North Cunningham. And the 1,000-foot knocks out a lot of that.
Yeah, that might be a little too much.
So these are, I'm having trouble distinguishing between a school and an alcohol sales license in terms of colors.
Yeah.
Well, the schools all have buffers around them.
Well, what is on North
Cunningham Children's Home.
Cunningham?
Oh,
that's,
this one?
Yeah, Children's Home.
That's Children's Home.
Yeah, here, this is the children's home, and then this one I think is some sort of church-related school.
Okay.
I'm not sure
okay,
exactly what
all
that
right.
is.
I'm now.
Well, I'm inclined to say 500.
Yeah, well, the other place that's going to matter is around Cunningham,
Mm-hmm.
because it's going to cut out parcels on Cunningham.
It does, it cuts out a few.
Um,
I'm curious though, what, you mentioned sending a message, like what, I kind of have a problem with the idea that we're sending a message that in some ways stigmatizes this versus alcohol. I like the idea of having something that is based on something that seems to have been working for a while versus arbitrarily choosing a distance out of thin air to some extent. Because then, to me, the one thing that does do is send this message that one is preferred over the other or something like that, which, I don't know.
Well,
Not sure that's what we want to do.
I hear you. And part of my comment a minute ago was looking at the map, it didn't seem to matter. But actually, the North Cunningham matters. And therefore, it raises the question of what's the justification. And you know, I look at it and I don't see why.
Well, based, I mean, both what you said and then the discussion we had last week about what are the regulations for liquor, and if liquor is 100 feet, that is something we've been using. That would be a rationale. I mean, we could say, let's go 200 or 300, but I don't know what the rationale for that is.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying, is that we've been using this 100-foot buffer around liquor stores, which, I mean, I don't know what the original rationale for that was, but it seems to be something that's, you know, accepted practice at this point and seems to be functioning and well enough. So why would we deviate from that?
I think it's a lot easier to sneak out of school and have a little pot than it is to sneak out of school and drink.
Well, that may be, can you
you're not-
slide us over to King's School again?
Yeah.
I can smell them both.
So King's School would still, at 100 feet, would knock out that
That
immediately
it would knock out
adjacent
that parcel, yeah.
Which I think is actually
That's a good thing.
Is that the paper company, the distributor? What is that? Anyway,
I don't know.
that the 100 feet knocks out that parcel, I think is okay.
I don't understand the rationale for the 100-foot rule with alcohol sales.
I have no idea.
And I don't think we have to follow that in every case.
Well, we did want to try to kind of be consistent, but you're right, we don't. To me, the 100-foot alcohol sale is just as arbitrary as anything we would do, although it is existing practice.
Yeah, I don't think we have to follow it, but I think, to me, it doesn't look great when we sort of arbitrarily pick a distance at random to some extent. You know, is it 200, is it 300, is it 500? At least with 100, again, it seems like it's something that we've been doing. It's, again, regulating a similar type of use or activity that we're, you know, have certain concerns about. So I think it seems more defensible to me rather than sort of trying to do this from scratch with, again, not really having a basis to come up with that distance.
Yeah, I'm comfortable, well, with the 100 feet for two reasons. One, Dustin's, and the other is that in general, all our schools are protected at near 500 feet anyway. And the one that isn't zaps the parcel next to it with the 100-foot rule. So I think we come out okay anyway.
Can someone remind me the discussion we were talking about in last meeting about there was protest from neighborhood about liquor store locating in a high traffic area. Can someone provide a little bit detail about that case?
I think I'm the one that brought it up. And it was indeed King School. And it was the parcel, I don't have a pointer.
There's a video stop.
If
that
I
the
do
one?
that, can you see where I'm pointing? No.
I think, yeah.
I was thinking that it might,
Yeah, be smart screen or something.
no. So it's the corner of Lincoln and whatever this street,
Church.
right
Yes,
there.
yeah, right here.
Right there.
Yeah, I could see that.
That
I was just messing with you.
pair of stores, which is was a video store. I can't remember what it is. It's now
They wanted to be,
half a video store and half a
Right.
prosthetics, I think,
Yes.
maybe.
Yeah.
But they wanted a liquor license.
To do
in order to have a
video
gaming hall.
gaming,
In
yeah.
order to have a gaming
Yeah,
hall.
to do video gaming.
And the protest
The
from the
neighborhood.
neighborhood was, that was the major route to school for the kids on the east side of Lincoln, and they were going to be walking by this, and that was a neighborhood protest.
well, even if we do
But-
100 feet, as you said, you can't
But-
put one there because it,
Yeah,
Yeah.
but, and that's what I was trying to get at before, saying that the advantage of Dustin's argument is we're simply borrowing from something that's been around for a long time, and its justification is history.
Now
The
the-
2 cents is.
now medical cannabis
But the
is
other is,
1,000.
it works.
Yeah.
Anyway, because of the way the zoning happens to be laid out, that it doesn't create problems that I can see anyway. So it seems to me the simplest solution.
Medical cannabis is 1,000 feet.
Yeah.
That's in the state law.
And as I think raised last time, it makes no sense to
doesn't.
me
No, I
that
agree.
that
I agree
is,
with
that it- but I think that's also history.
That it is. It's
Because
the
that's
old timey
2 years
thinking.
ago.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that was the
And-
political deal they got.
Yeah.
They
2 years
just
ago,
did
or
it.
4
They'll
years ago,
probably
or
come back and
whatever,
change that, yeah.
And all of these things are going to evolve.
There's going to be some kind of trailer bill I've been hearing to come
A
behind it.
lot of things are
So-
going to change in the next
Yeah.
5 years.
So I'm pretty sure with dispensaries, the state already struck that whole distance requirement for medical dispensaries. You can continue your discussion, but I think I have it on my flash drive. There's an FAQ.
It doesn't matter.
Okay,
I'm
okay.
just saying, it's another point of reference. But if we want to be consistent with the liquor code, go with 100. And we've looked at the locations and 100 works. I don't like the idea of knocking out half of Cunningham
Yeah, I don't know.
with 500 feet. So that's just the economics of the thing. So, all right.
1,000 feet would knock out of half of Cunningham, but
Oh, it'd be
500
worse.
wouldn't.
500 would still take a good chunk of
It's
it,
the
yeah.
blue line.
Yeah.
Yeah,
1,000 would knock most of it out.
right.
In fact,
I-
almost all of it.
I don't think it's taking up that much,
Which one?
500.
500?
Well, I think the it's parcel boundary to parcel boundary. So
Yeah, it's-
It actually takes more than what the line looks like. I mean, the line is from the parcel boundary,
Yeah.
but any parcel it touches,
Touches it.
It probably knocks out half of it,
it
Jane.
goes all the way to
Yeah.
Perkins Road, for example.
Yeah.
Because it goes to the parcels.
Yeah.
But are those individual parcels?
That's, you
each
can see the
purple
Boundaries are
yeah.
there, I think.
Yeah.
Or maybe I'm misreading.
No, I
Yeah,
think that's
so,
right. Yeah.
yeah, it's hard to see the individual boundaries. It does include, so this is the whatever, the
Strip mall.
Northgate Shopping
Yeah.
Center.
Yeah,
So
it
it
knocks
knocks
it
out
out.
like the thing that includes Harbor Freight.
Yeah.
It would go, because that parcel goes all the way here, and then it knocks out these.
And the other one's the collision shop, and,
Well,
Yeah.
and the other thing is, it appears to me arbitrary to say that a set of parcels on the east side of Cunningham that are, from a land use point of view, because Cunningham Home doesn't actually have any entrance anymore, I think.
off of Lincoln.
They said
It
they were
has one?
changing, they said they were changing the main entrance.
Oh, so the main entrance is off Perkins now.
Right.
Going to be.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, maybe it already is.
But the orientation of Cunningham is now not to Lincoln Avenue in terms of its functioning. And sort of say that you happen to be across from it, you can't do this, and if you're a little bit farther north, you can.
Yeah.
And I just noticed, this parcel right here is also Cunningham Children's Home. It just wasn't,
It's not
I guess it
shaded.
wasn't, yeah, it wasn't included in the layer that I pulled, so,
Oh, it would be even worse.
yeah, so, yeah.
So that would knock out, well, the parcels that it knocks out are already knocked out anyway.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking 500 feet, it might touch some of these,
Yeah.
maybe, but probably
I'll
not.
come around to 100.
Yeah.
Yeah, in any case.
Okay, just, 100 feet,
I want to state that I don't like the 100-foot rule, but I can't defend it either.
it can't defy HUD, yeah,
I would prefer it be 500, but I understand it's hard to defend that.
yeah. I was there, but then now after the discussion, I've come down, so. All right, well, it sounds like we've got a potential for a vote there. So let's look at the cultivation centers. So this is just from residential, because I don't think there's any schools that come into play, except for some of these little ones that have residential, will be knocked out anyway. And personally, I think we want them to be knocked out.
What are we saying, we want what to be knocked out?
The littler industrial zones, like on University. Whatever this one is,
Yeah, now,
They're all touching the 300 buffer, it looks like.
so for.
yeah, that's the
for
recommendation here.
cultivation centers.
Yes, cultivation centers. So all the little ones are knocked out, I think, which is fine with me. Because a big one up on North Lincoln or North Cunningham is really, I think, would be our target.
And so I just noticed this parcel right here, while technically it would not be knocked out, I know that the next door are residentially zoned parcels in the county. So I think we would go ahead and knock those out. If somebody wanted to put something there, we'd say that stuff next door in the county is zoned residential. That's how we've done things in the past.
Yeah, so we're
so-
talking blue line again, right?
Yeah, the
Yeah,
light
so
blue.
So you're right about that, yeah. I was looking at the green one.
It is more prominent. I'll probably update these before going to council so that it's easier to see everything.
So I'm actually personally okay with this 300-foot. Anybody?
So a lot of this other stuff that's residential in the county then would also knock out.
Yeah, I think we'd have to factor that in to be good neighbors.
So,
So if we're looking at this, we're really looking at just the industrial area up on the
Whoops.
north side of town, right?
you know,
Yes.
Yeah.
I would think if I'm a big cultivator, I'm gonna want a large area anyway. You know, it's the craft grower who's gonna wanna locate close to dispensaries or next door to, as part of a dispensary, but they're the ones who I think you might have issues with smell and that
Let's
stuff.
look at New Med real quick on that one.
Yeah.
I don't know if I showed New Med on here, but New Med is right
University of
here.
Broadway.
No, right
Or
here.
you-
Yeah,
Race. Yeah,
right there.
okay. Well, so you can't be a craft grower?
No, there could be a craft.
Yeah, because they're mostly surrounded. Yeah, they would be able to be a craft grower if you did a 300-foot buffer. I don't think I was proposing.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah,
yes.
this is just
That's
cultivation,
just-
not
that's cultivation
not smaller.
centers.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
because those
Yeah.
are going to be
They could still be a
huge.
craft grower. Right.
Yeah.
Those cultivation centers will be
Exactly.
farms under
Warehouse,
roof,
yeah.
warehouses.
All right. Any other commentary on that?
if, go back up to the north, again, I'm distracted. So the green areas you've identified as unlikely to be suitable,
hmm
but what are they or why are you coming to that conclusion?
Yeah, so, and I think I outlined this in the memo, but since the maximum square footage you can have of flowering plants is 210,000 square feet. I just identified anything under 210,000 square feet as being unsuitable. And that's a pretty conservative estimate, considering you're not going to
But it's
have a
not that we
building
are
from-
permitting
No.
Correct. I mean, you still could put a facility there, but I think since there are only 9 more licenses that we're going to see in the state,
I
it's
get-
probably,
I get
yeah.
your logic.
But,
If I'm thinking of this as a where are they permitted now? They're permitted in those green areas.
Yeah, you might
Yeah.
want to turn it purple and
And-
then maybe crosshatch it or something.
yeah, and that's a good point, because I didn't consider that somebody could buy 2 adjacent lots and treat them as a zoning lot. So there you go. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I think that matters down, whatever, a couple inches below along, where there would be a big difference in the amount of land available. In any case, there are 2 small purple, a trapezoid and a
Down here.
and then a lot of green.
Yeah.
And it gives the impression that there's little there, but actually there's lots there.
Yeah. Looks like it's possible that this residential knocks it out, but I'm not sure.
Well,
Yeah, so if it was a,
100 foot would knock some of it out.
yeah, 300 foot would knock out these 2 and most of these
Oh,
parcels
the
as
green
well.
ones, yeah,
Yeah.
okay, I see, yeah.
But
Not all of them.
But not all of them, whereas the 1,000 foot would knock out all of them.
And I suppose I should point out also that sites that already have buildings on them are probably less desirable than some of the really large sites that are essentially just green fields, since the facilities are going to have to meet some pretty strict standards from the state. I imagine most of the cultivation centers are going to be newly built buildings. Not that you couldn't take down a building that's already there.
Sure.
but-
But I think we need to keep in mind, we're permitting them.
Mhm.
We also want to make sure we have places where they would want to go because we want them to be able to locate. But, yeah, I think we have to be careful about pretending that there are areas where they're not going to happen.
Yeah, and I'll take that out. I'll take out the unsuitable or unlikely to be suitable, however it's stated there.
That makes sense.
Everything we're talking about is for THC marijuana. We're not talking about hemp.
Correct.
Everything we're talking about is THC, not
Yeah.
hemp, right?
Correct.
Yep.
Okay, is there anything else that, concern or further discussion that we want to do? Do you have, Well, let's-
Look at the
we'll-
text that was added.
yeah, let's look
Yeah.
back at that text and make sure that we've got that. And then I think we'll have to have an amendment on the, I think we'll have to have a motion on the original language and an amendment to add the additional language.
You can do it in one motion.
You could do it in one motion with the amendment suggested by city staff. All right, we could do that.
Before we leave this part, if I could just jump in, I'm wondering, because you talked about the county properties, Kevin, if number 3, you would want to expand that a little bit, just to reference residentially zoned properties
Or county residential districts. Yeah.
something more general in addition to the.
You could add it
zoning
after
districts.
MOR zoning district or residential districts in the county.
Yeah, I mean, or if you just wanted to be broad, you could just say residential zoning districts or city or county residential zoning districts. I don't really know that we have to get as specific as we did here. That's just what we did
This
with,
includes all residential.
it. Yeah,
Ours.
all of the Rs plus B3U and MOR, so.
I'm okay. I don't care. I mean,
So that language, but including the county zone, county residential zones, I think is a good idea.
yeah. Okay, so within 100 feet is the addition to number 1. Number 2 is as originally, well, it's the state law. Number 3, we'll add in with the statement of any lot in the city or county residential zoning districts, or B3U, or MOR. Do you have to say that? Yes. I don't think it hurts.
Yeah, that would work.
Yeah. And then I think we should go ahead and add some teeth for the zoning administrator to be able to make sure that the odors are mitigated. Even though I think state law will probably try to address that, but
So we need a motion.
now, if we're okay with this language, then now we're ready for a motion.
I think there's an update to the table as well.
Yeah,
B2 for
that's true.
conditional.
The update to the, Ms. Yu is correct. Update to the table to add a conditional use for dispensaries in B2, to be consistent with the liquor code. No, correct. Correct. Correct.
It's just our rationale.
Yeah, right. But it's in the record.
Yes,
Yeah.
but it's not in ordinance. Okay. So, I move that we send blank case 2385 D19 to the planning commission,
To the city council, yeah.
to the city council, with a recommendation for approval with the following changes. Adding the language under B 1, 3, and 4 as presented tonight. Adding
With the amendments suggested by Plan Commission to B3.
Oh, right. Using the language of residential categories in the city and county. And the modification of the table to have conditional use.
For
on
dispensaries.
B2,
For dispensaries.
for dispensaries in B2. And I think
I think
that's
that's got it. Second by Mr. Ackerson. Motion by Mr. Hopkins. Any additional discussion? Then we're ready for a roll call vote.
Mr. Ackerson,
Yes.
Mr. Allred,
Yes.
Ms. Gilman,
Yes.
Mr. Fell, Mr. Fitch,
Yes?
Mr. Hopkins, yes, Mr. Weisskopf, Ms. Yu,
Yes.
The motion passes. Nicely done, Plan Commission. And you too, Mr. Garcia.
Thank you.
So now comes Crazy's zoning board from the county. Okay, October 21st on the recreational marijuana bill to the council. So now we're going to open, we don't have any old business. We don't have any new public hearings. We have new business. This is 2 cases. Champaign County Zoning Board of Appeals, 931 AM 19. Amend the county zoning map to allow for development of 5 single-family residential lots in the Conservation Recreation Zoning District by adding a rural residential overlay district in conjunction with related county board special use permit that has already been, I don't know if it's already been passed or not, but certainly it's in conjunction with that permit as required in the county zoning ordinance. There's also CCZBA 934 AM 19, which actually is the same number. Is that right? Is that a typo?
It's 934 rather than 931.
Oh,
First one's
931. I might have
931.
misread the first one. 934 AM 19. Amend the county zoning map to change the CR Conservation Recreation Zoning District to Ag 2 for proposed outlots as named in the case in the preliminary plot by Burns Clancy and Associates, received July 31st, 2019, in order to establish and operate an existing private indoor recreational development in a related zoning case.
Thank you all. We will try and move this along. This is a long-standing case that started over a decade ago and has come back, and I'll give you more about that. Bill Cope and Mary Calancis submitted a petition to the Champaign County Department of Planning and Zoning requesting a rezoning to allow a residential development on a 17-acre tract of land commonly known as 4018 North Lincoln Avenue, shown here in Exhibit A, located at the southeast corner of Lincoln and Centennial Farm Road, approximately 1/4 mile from the city of Urbana's corporate limits. Champaign County requires a rezoning and a special use permit to authorize a rural residential overlay, which is required to create more than 3 lots. As such, this presentation addresses both cases. 931 Zoning Amendment 19, which adds the rural residential overlay in conjunction with a special use permit that is not a subject of tonight, to allow for more than 3 lots. And secondly, changing the zoning district for part of the parcel from conservation recreation to Ag 2. The proposed rezoning is of interest to the city to the extent that it will affect zoning and land use development decisions within the city's extraterritorial jurisdiction. Since development within the ETJ may abut Urbana's corporate limits or may eventually be annexed into the city, some level of consistency in zoning regulations is desirable. Land uses in the county affect the city of Urbana in several ways, including conflict between land uses in the county with those in the city, the likelihood of annexation of these lands and their land uses into the city, and the potential impacts of these lands' development patterns on the city's potential to grow. For these reasons, the city should examine the proposed rezoning to ensure compatibility with existing city ordinances. It's the Plan Commission's responsibility to review the proposed amendment, to determine what impact it may have on the city, and to recommend to City Council whether or not to protest the proposed rezoning. Under state law, a municipal protest of the proposed amendments would require a 3/4 supermajority of votes for approval of the request at the county board. Otherwise, a simple majority would be required. So if the city does protest, county board has to have a stronger vote to actually have it go through. The county gave detailed information on the rezoning cases in their preliminary and supplementary memorandum. Tonight's Plan Commission discussion will focus only on those issues that are pertinent to the city's planning jurisdiction. To be clear, this county rezoning review and approval is a separate action from approval of any future subdivision, including any site plans that may have been included in tonight's information. So it's like if somebody submits a rezoning request and they say, I want to do X there, well, you ignore the X. You just focus on the rezoning and any potential uses that could be included in that rezoning. So to restate, any future subdivision must still comply with the City of Urbana's subdivision and land development code regulations. In addition to the 2 zoning map amendment cases before you tonight, the petitioners have submitted to the county 2 associated cases which are not reviewed by the city. Case 932 S19, which is a special use permit for a rural residential overlay zoning district in conjunction with a related map amendment. So they require a special use permit and a map amendment to do this multiple lot subdivision. And finally, another special use permit to authorize and establish a combination private indoor recreation development and outdoor commercial recreational enterprise, aka an event center, with a waiver to be, as a special use, with a waiver to be 30 feet from a residential use in lieu of the minimum required 200 feet. So, a rural residential overlay district was originally granted by the county in 2007, but because a plat approval was not completed within 2 years of that approval, the rural residential overlay expired and must be applied for again. This RRO district was reviewed and approved by the Urbana Plan Commission as Plan Cases 573 AM 06 and 579 AM 07 in 2007. So some of you may remember this case from before. With a subsequent action by Urbana City Council to fail to approve a letter of protest against these two requests, allowing them to go forward to county board without requiring a supermajority. So the site plan, which you see before you now, we'll do a little zooming in. So this is Lincoln Avenue's new alignment here, and there is a driveway coming off of Centennial Farm Road down into the parcel, and you see the lovely Y-shaped residence that's owned by Cope and Calancis, and there is a detached garage here to the southwest. This is the site of the currently non-conforming event center that is attempting to being brought into conformity. The
Clarification, the garage is or the house is?
the garages. It will be split out, if you can see the orange lines.
Yeah, I just wanted to make clear,
As-
because the obvious event center is the house, not the garage.
As I understand it, it's in the garage, but that is neither here nor there for the purposes of tonight's case. The point is that they want to follow these orange lines and create a 5 buildable lot subdivision on which, on which the house will be on a lot and the garage will be on its own separate lot and be considered, its primary principal use on that lot. And then additional lots would be created, and then outlots would be created east of this dotted line here that would be not buildable and would get rezoned back to CR Conservation Recreation.
Marcus, is the dashed line the floodplain?
The floodplain is roughly along the dotted line.
Which dotted? I'm talking about the curved dotted line that follows the contours to the left of where your hand thing is.
Let's see. I do not believe that that is the floodplain line because there are also, this is projected to be a buildable lot, and this is projected to be a buildable lot. It's possible that it's currently the floodplain now, but they plan on filling or grading to bring it out of the floodplain.
Okay.
Clarification,
Sure.
this is irrelevant,
Yes,
okay?
I am more than glad to gloss over it. Oh.
But I think it's crucial because this subdivision plat is not acceptable, but that's not what we're actually doing
Correct.
tonight.
Correct.
And the city still
And the
has.
city has subdivision authority, so we're
That's
going to
correct.
get this back.
Right, that was
And
my,
the subdivision,
That was
you
my-
said this at the beginning.
yes.
but
Reiterate it, yeah.
I'm sort of reiterating
Yeah.
it because the need, not just the temptation, to go
Right.
into the details of this plat is pretty problematic.
So are you suggesting that I just disregard all of this, which I'm
Well,
I'm glad to
I-
do?
Giving us a
I
preview. is
guess
good.
what I'm trying to say is perhaps perhaps we need to be on record as saying that there are potential problems with this proposed plat.
I think that would be a
But
fair statement.
only if those potential problems seem to us to create a problem for the rezoning, do we want to get into them? And so, but my understanding is the rural residential overlay is a zoning designation. It has nothing to do with subdivision, other than it's required if a subdivision is asked for.
Correct.
Okay.
Right.
Another clarification.
Yes.
The house is the event center.
It is? Okay, thank you. I'm not sure if they plan on moving, but again, I'm not going to get into it. Yeah.
So, yeah, and let me, following up on Lou's point. So the thing that we're considering tonight is whether rezoning the CR to ag in order to allow residential is something that we're okay with. Is that the
That is
gist-
correct, yes.
The gist of what we're considering tonight?
Yes. And I thought it was merely good practice to let you know the other cases that were involved in the package at the county board level.
Sure, context is good.
And-
Okay.
and as I said, I think it is relevant to note that we do have questions about the implied subdivision plat.
Yes.
But
And I
we
think if.
can't raise them at this point because we don't actually have a
not the
proposed
case.
subdivision.
Right. And as a major development, I believe it will come to Plan Commission. Is that correct? Yes.
That's correct.
Yes, so
Yeah.
we'll come back to you anyways.
One further question about these lots. Is it proposed that these be single-family, or do we know yet?
We don't know yet, and I
That's
don't
about all the
even think,
residential that our ag will allow.
or even the county's ag
Yeah,
will allow,
okay.
or county's zoning will allow. Okay, so, and probably one of the big reasons I brought this up was the two other cases that you're not looking at tonight about the waiver of the 200-foot distance buffer down to 30 is, I believe, this distance here. And that's why I was under the assumption that the event center was going to be down here because it would be 200 feet from this residential use normally, and they're wanting to waive that down to 30 feet. I have not had discussions with the county on this because it wasn't really part of our discussion requirements. Okay, the site plan, when overlaid, with the proposed zoning, shows that lots, outlot A, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 would need to be rezoned to County Ag 2 from their current County Conservation Recreation, while outlots B, 4A, and 5A would stay zoned as County Conservation Recreation due to their location in the floodplain. The petitioners propose using lots 3, 4, 5, so 3, 4, 5, and outlots 4A and 4B, so basically this chunk here for the event center stuff. And so lots 5 and 5A may be associated with it, but it would not be for the event center itself. And lots 1 and 2 would not be involved in the event center. Again, not pertinent to tonight's discussion.
Okay, but the rezoning of what here is described as outlot 5A, 4A, and outlot B to conservation is also not part of our decision tonight. Tonight, we're rezoning the whole thing to ag. Is that
No,
correct?
that's not correct.
Oh, okay, so,
So outlots B, 4A, and 5A are currently zoned conservation recreation and would stay that.
now, tell me that again, which lots?
Outlots B down here,
Yeah,
4A and 5A. The whole thing is currently zoned conservation recreation.
okay, so we are drawing a line.
Yes, this line right here.
So
Along
we are
there?
actually approving a subdivision.
Along their lot line, yes.
We are approving a split zoning of a parcel
Along their lot line.
Based on a line.
based on proposed subdivision lines.
Uh,
So it's similar to, I think, what we did at the county nursing home. It was split zoned for a long time. It's one giant
but-
county-owned
but this-
parcel.
Yeah, but the split zoning has a line that defines the split. Yes?
Not yet. So these lots don't exist yet.
That's what I understand. So
Okay.
I want to know how we split zone a parcel where we have to define, I think, I may be wrong, where the split occurs if the parcel has not yet been subdivided.
That would be a good question for city or county engineer. This site plan, is a plat of survey that is not recorded yet. It comes with lot lines and angles and distances that establish lots up on a parcel or tracks on a parcel.
I understand.
Okay.
but
So if I can jump in here for a
Please,
second. Maybe tonight we should be considering this as they're rezoning this general area and that general area, because we don't ultimately make the decision. All the Plan Commission is tasked with is making a recommendation on whether City Council should protest this rezoning or not. So we don't have to concern ourselves with where precisely that line's going to be, just that there will be a split zone somewhere.
Okay, but the reason this matters goes back to what Dustin raised, which is, which one of these dotted lines is actually the floodplain? And the buildability of lots 5, and lot 5 in particular, but also lot 4, which already has a building on it, based on the floodplain. And the other thing is, I don't think these things are actually lined up. There is now a new, I went on Google Earth, and there is now a June photo with the new alignment, and the driveway obviously has to be changed, and the adjacent driveway of the adjacent parcel should be coming out of the spur, road. Why can't I come up with the label for, but there are, where the line goes that this is about, I think, well, I guess I don't see any way around Kevin's suggestion of how we deal with it, but I think it has to be clear that we are not approving any of the engineered survey lines. We are
Correct.
not suggesting that we are including that.
I agree, and I guess it would be nice to have had legal descriptions for the chunk that is to be zoned ag and that chunk that is going to stay zoned conservation recreation.
Okay.
So again, and hopefully a little bit will become clearer as I proceed. So the subject property had originally been split zoned back in the early 2000s, with the west 6 acres zoned County Ag 2 and the eastern 13 acres zoned County CR since the adoption of the county zoning ordinance back in '73. Then in 2007, the western 6 acres was rezoned to County CR, bringing the entire parcel to be zoned CR Conservation Recreation.
Marcus, do you know if that original zoning was based on the floodplain then?
I have no idea.
Okay.
And it's interesting that 2007 was probably in some relation to the plan at that time for the rural residential overlay district. That's the only thing I can think of, because both of those happened in 2007. So it feels like they're going from full conservation recreation back over to part of it being Ag 2, because there are more development uses permitted in the Ag 2 than there are in the CR, and the development regulations are less strict in the Ag 2 than in the CR. They might have realized that they may have tied their hands a bit in rezoning it all to CR. So all 4 cases were unanimously recommended for approval by the Champaign County ZBA, I believe back in July. These 2 cases, as well as the special use permit for the rural residential overlay, will go to their Environmental and Land Use Committee tonight, October 10th. And the case 935S19 special use permit for the event center was approved contingent upon approval of case 934AM19, which is the rezoning to Ag 2. So if the county board rezones this to Ag 2, it will automatically get that special use permit for the event center, because that's up to their ZBA. If forwarded by the Urbana Plan Commission, these 2 cases would be reviewed by Urbana City Council on October 18th in time for input to reach the county board for their next possible October 24th meeting. So looking at the county zoning, we'll zoom in a little bit here. Currently, right
Marcus,
now. Yes.
sorry, just to clarify, that would be
Yes.
October 21st
21st, thank you.
Yes. for our city council.
Yes.
They don't meet on Fridays.
Oh, so close. Put them to work early. Okay, so it's hard to tell with this shading, although I will say that I didn't make these maps. This is the color for CR, Conservation Recreation, and you can see that this entire blob here is Conservation Recreation. Oh, it's better up there. And then to the southeast down here, this is all heavy industrial. This is light this is Ag 2. This is Ag 2. So what they are proposing to do is as we go back to rezone this western section from the, it says proposed CR, but it's currently CR now. This is also one of the county's maps. The green is proposed Ag 2. So it's all conservation recreation right now, and they're proposing to take this section from conservation recreation to Ag 2. Is that clear as mud to everybody? Okay. So according to the Champaign County zoning ordinance, the county Ag 2 agricultural district is intended to preserve the agricultural nature within areas which are predominantly vacant, while the county CR Conservation Recreation District is intended to protect the public health by restricting development in areas that are subject to frequent or periodic floods, and to conserve the natural and scenic areas generally along the stream network of the county. city staff presume that the reversion of the the retention of the parcel's eastern flood-prone portion at Conservation Recreation is to keep it designated as a natural area to be protected from more intense residential and agricultural uses, while changing the western portion over to agricultural allows more intense residential and business type uses. Moving down into the county zoning, although Champaign County permits single-family homes by right within the Ag 2 and CR district, it permits subdivisions in these districts only as follows. No subdivisions totaling more than 3 lots that are less than 35 acres each from any parcel of land existing in 1998 shall be created unless a rural residential overlay district has been created. So you can chunk off a piece of land and put a house on it, but if you want to do a 4-lot subdivision, you have to add in a rural residential overlay district, which moves you from going by right to having to come see their zoning board of appeals to get that rural residential overlay district approved and then going to their county board. Approval of the RRO district does not change any of the existing basic requirements for the underlying districts. All other restrictions, such as permitted and conditional uses, setbacks, lot coverage, etc., remain in effect. The final layout of the lots must be approved by the city as part of its major subdivision review process. To establish an RRO, the county considers whether the subject property is most suitable to be retained as agricultural farmland or for the type of development proposed. Excuse me. One of the most important of the county review criteria is the land evaluation and site assessment system and the land evaluation factor score it produces for the subject site. The analysis by the county for this parcel determined that soils on the subject property are not best prime farmland, and that the site assessment portion of the LISA analysis for the subject property scored 6 out of 200 points, and that the total LISA score is 92 and indicates a low rating for protection of agriculture. So it's all currently conservation recreation. Even as prime farmland, it would still get additional protection, and the county has determined that this is not even prime farmland. So their staff are recommending that this rezoning request be approved. In this analysis, city staff review the comprehensive plan and see how the proposed rezoning reflects or conflicts with goals and objectives in our comprehensive plan. The following comprehensive plan goals and objectives relate to this case, including preserving natural resources and environmentally sensitive areas, encouraging compact, contiguous, and sustainable growth patterns, ensuring that new land uses are compatible with and enhance the existing community, minimizing incompatible land uses, identifying and addressing issues created by overlapping jurisdiction in the ETJ, and finally, when evaluating rezoning requests in the ETJ, the city is required to consider their potential impact in relation to the intent of the city's comprehensive plan. Some of the relevant Champaign County goals and objectives do coincide with those of the Urbana Comprehensive Plan. City staff find that the rezoning to County Ag 2 agriculture with a rural residential overlay designation to accommodate the proposed subdivision would be generally consistent with the goals and objectives of the Urbana Comprehensive Plan. In relation to city zoning, in the event of a subdivision being annexed into the city, the current county CR Conservation District designation would convert directly to city CRE, Conservation Recreation Education, and the proposed Ag 2 Agriculture District designation would convert directly to City Ag Agriculture. And then, of course, because it's a rezoning, the city evaluates it with the LaSalle and Sinclair criteria. There's 8 of them. They are laid out in the memo. I'm not going to go through them, but I'm glad to answer questions about them. They are summarized in the staff findings. Regarding potential impacts to City of Urbana zoning, if the proposed rezoning from County CR to County Ag 2 were granted, and there was a future annexation, excuse me. And there was a future annexation of the property. And the only difference in the resulting direct conversion of the county zoning to city zoning is that the city's maximum floor ratio would drop from 0.4 to 0.25, allowing less gross floor area to be constructed. Staff does not anticipate a negative impact to the city or to the city's ability to plan or manage growth or development. The staff findings of fact are summarized in the report, including that the proposed zoning change is generally compatible with the land use policy goals of the comprehensive plan, which promotes contiguous growth and compatibility of land uses, and that the evaluation of the LaSalle and Sinclair criteria found that the proposed zoning change is acceptable because the site and surrounding area are generally suitable for the proposed zoning district, and the change will not be injurious to the general welfare of the district. Finally, the proposed rezoning and overlay district should not negatively affect the city or the city's ability to plan or manage growth or development. I guess I would finally like to wrap up to mention that it's interesting that this land used to be zoned Ag 2 and was rezoned to CR Conservation Recreation back in 2007, and now is being asked to be zoned back to Ag 2. Let me... Yes, with the western 6 acres zoned county Ag 2 agricultural. Okay. The Plan Commission has the following, and here is the City of Urbana's comprehensive land use map showing the majority of the property to be designated for future land use of residential, with this portion northwest of the new alignment of Lincoln, which is not subject to tonight's request for rezoning. It's actually this portion down here. This portion is designated to be future land use residential, and this southeastern portion on the east side of the stream is designated for future land use of light industrial. So going to the options and recommendation, the Urbana Plan Commission may forward the plan case to City Council with a recommendation to defeat a resolution of protest, or forward it to City Council with a recommendation to defeat a resolution of protest contingent upon specific provisions to be identified, or forward the plan case to the City Council with a recommendation to adopt a resolution of protest. Staff recommendation is based on staff findings. Staff recommends that the Plan Commission forward to the City Council a recommendation to defeat a resolution of protest as presented. And I am open to any questions and clarifications.
Thank you, Mr. Ricci. Any questions for city staff? No? Okay, thank you. Well, any thoughts?
I have a question.
Yes, you?
So, in 2007, it converted the whole parcel to be conservation, and at the same time, they applied a rural residential overlay. Are those two comparable to go together?
I don't think so, Mr. Ricci. I think RRO only goes with ag, right? Or does it go with CR as well?
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I think it's permitted in either district. The way this write-up is written, county zoning, Champaign County permits single-family homes by right in the Ag 2 or CR districts, but no subdivisions totaling more than 3 lots from any parcel of land. It doesn't specify zoning, requires a rural residential overlay district.
And that just pertains to the reason that they want to subdivide it more than 3 times and not to any use or any,
Correct. It
Yeah.
does not specify subdivisions for residential, industrial,
Right.
agriculture
right,
even.
right. Okay, well, that's kind of weird. But, I mean, you got a thought? I don't like it. I mean, I don't like it. This is why you don't, why you rezone, because somebody wants to do something that is highly unorthodox, right? I mean, it's their land and all this, and I guess it makes sense to them. But I don't even know why it's residential on our plan. I mean, it's sandwiched between the industrial zones and agriculture. That seems weird to me. But,
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I guess all we can go off is what the comp plan has in terms
Yeah.
of the future land use, but it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I don't know, whether or not this satisfies goal 15, for example, in terms of encouraging compact, contiguous, sustainable growth patterns. I have some problems with that. This is a clear example of leapfrog development, although it is residential development in an area that the city sees as being residential at some point in the future. But
I agree.
And I get, part of what I'm trying to figure out is are we dealing with 2 cases, 2 proposals here, or 1? Because rezoning back to ag is much less of a problem for me than the rural residential overlay district. And I don't know, can we defeat a resolution of protest for one but not for the other? I know it doesn't accomplish what they want to do, but one makes a lot more sense to me than the other.
I think technically it's 2 because of the rural residential overlay district aspect, which is like one of our overlay districts, and the straight rezone.
I think the effect of if, say, you recommended recommended protesting, say, the rural residential overlay district and recommending not to protest the rezoning to ag would be to effectively rezone it to ag, but then they would only be permitted to
Subdivide it.
three total subdivisions.
Right. So we'd basically be saying, we'll rezone it, but we don't like your subdivision plan.
And I guess I would then say, or you could pick the recommendation contingent upon specific provisions to be identified. So if there are questions or concerns that you have about the site plan that we're not really supposed to be looking at, or
no,
reasons
we
like,
can't do that. Yeah.
you know, if you're saying where this lot line is, or just about the floodplain, if you can, articulate that, then that could be then forwarded on to city council and county board about your concerns about that. Whether or not you choose to go with the defeat contingent or with the adopt a resolution of protest. But yes, you're absolutely right, it's 2 separate cases,
So
and you can vote separately.
for me, if there's a reason if there's a reason to recommend not to defeat a resolution of protest on 931 AM 19, which is the RRO, the reason would be because we don't think it's appropriate to subdivide this parcel 5 times for residential. And in the 12 years I've been on Plan Commission, we've never not voted to, recommended not to defeat a resolution to protest. Yeah, well, will there be, militia from Champaign coming over here to, what would be the fallout of that? Do you guys have relations? I mean, huh?
With the county?
Yeah. I just want to know. May not be relevant.
I would like to point out, we're not making the final decision. We're making a recommendation to the
Sure,
city council.
Sure, absolutely.
It's their
Yeah,
call.
Absolutely. And they always do what we recommend.
I don't know that you really need to consider whether there will be a fallout or not.
I don't think we do either. I'm just curious, since having never gone down this road.
I don't know. I know that we have done an analysis and found that, yes, since 2000, there have been very few recommendations to protest.
I don't recall any.
Before that, in the decades before that, they were more common. I don't know what the fallout was in those cases.
Ms. Yu?
So, if we adopt a resolution of protest, means the county board will have to have a supermajority to approve the case. But when county board, when county ZBA send us the case, they are anonymously approved. So even if their zoning board is in the same line of their county, the likelihood, if they like the plan, the likelihood of them approve with a supermajority is high, right?
Sure, it may be, but I don't know that
It's hard
that
to say.
It's
is
hard to say.
relevant.
Okay, so there are 2 different bodies. They might have carry a very different opinion. Their zoning board might be operating on one layer of rationality, and their county board will be on another layer.
Possibly, yeah.
Okay, got it.
Could we get
Mr. Hopkins.
the subdivision plat up on the screen again, because I don't have it?
And I'd also like to mention that, as Ms. Yu just brought up, whatever we do doesn't stop the
No, I
county
understand.
board from doing anything. It just forces them to have a stronger vote.
Sure.
Yeah, no, it's not this one, it's the other one.
Oh,
The other one's easier to read,
this one here?
for what I need. So, trying to develop an argument here. They need the RRO because they want to do more than 3 lots. They could do 3 lots without the RRO.
Mhm.
And if I understand what we think is true, they could actually do the 3 lots without a rezoning.
I think that's right.
If they,
There may be some other
right.
requirements in their zoning of what they can do in ag versus what they can do in CRE.
Right.
And my guess is that the problem is with the event center. That they can't do the event center in CRE, so they're trying to zone that to ag. But in any case, I'm sort of thinking this out loud. From our point of view, or at least from my point of view, one of the issues is creating 2 small, and they are pretty small, residential lots in this location, even though the comprehensive plan designates it as residential. Does not make sense. And with enough history, and I've got that much history, one of the reasons this is residential, which seems odd, is because it already was. And the bringing the heavy residential to the creek didn't seem like a great idea.
Mhm.
And given the realignment that was then already proposed, I'm not sure it was finally approved, then Lincoln Avenue rerouted became sort of like the line of where you stop the heavy industrial. But the implication was that the residential would not be high-density residential. And my reaction is the lot 1 and 2 are too small for this area. Outlot.
Any information on size?
That's
no,
just,
I'm
just
looking-
judging by it,
I'm-
yeah.
I'm
Okay.
making a judgment.
Yeah.
And I don't, yeah, I mean, you could go to the other version that has the survey and compute them, which would actually be interesting to do, but I'm not sure I'm willing to do it right now. With the rerouting, which you can't see on this image, the driveway for the lot to the upper right it no longer makes sense to be separate because you have this cul-de-sac that's going to be aligned opposite a road on the other side, which has been realigned with a realignment. So when the subdivision plat gets approved, those are going to be lined up. And that's going to make the driveway from the next lot too close to the intersection from engineering design criteria. So that lot needs to get access through outlot A to the cul-de-sac. Lot 1 is, it just strikes me as a totally impractical lot. Lot 2 is tiny. Lot 5, I think, is not buildable, and I think they admit that.
It looks to me like that's a parking.
Well,
lot.
they're
what they're gonna use it for.
proposing to use that as parking because they have to get parking for their event center to meet county zoning regulations. So Lot 5 and Lot 4 don't actually have to be divided, and I don't know why they're being divided, because they're going to claim to use them, and they're going to claim that what they need for Lot 4, they're going to provide in Lot 5, so the lots can't be separated anyway. So from my point of view, that gets us down to 4 lots. I'm guessing the outlots don't count, but they also don't need to be defined as outlots. They'll only be defined as outlots, I think, because they are being created without public access to public right-of-way, which makes them illegal lots if they're not outlots. So backing all those things up, I think they could do this with 3 lots.
Yeah, I think you're right.
They can, one lot can be the conference, the event center. And I think the reason I'm hypothesizing the reason they're splitting off Lot 3 is they're going to turn that into a caretaker's house, and I'm guessing they're moving.
Yeah.
And turning this into an event
I
center.
don't know.
I don't think we can say what they're going to do with those.
Well, I don't think we
No,
can
it's what they
either.
could
What I'm
do.
trying to think
It's what
through
they could
is,
do.
if we protest this, what are their options? Because I'm sort of gaming it. How are they going to game us? How are we going to game them? I think they could do it in 3 lots.
We don't know what they want to do.
Well,
Well,
they kind of,
so if we don't think this should be 5 lots because we don't think it should be small, residential lots at this location, then we could protest as, I think Tyler, somebody was,
Not
oh,
me.
Miss-
Yeah.
somebody was
Yeah,
suggesting
That's what I,
that if, then they would only be allowed to do 3 lots. And from our point of view, that might be appropriate. In other words, we're not against the event center, we're not
Right.
against their being able to rezone to get the event center.
Right.
We're concerned about various things, one of which is leapfrog, small lots, isolated, no fire protection, no
Yes.
sewer access.
Mr. Ackerson?
Yes, thank you. Which is what brings me back to, I would favor the rezoning to ag. Ag, I think, gives them a little more flexibility, but we don't support the request for the rural residential overlay. And in our discussion, I think it's clear as to why. Because they can do the 3, but can they do the 3 in the current zoning? They can do the 3 in the CRE? To me, it's a little harder to say we can't go back to what the zoning was before, just because we're suspicious about what they want to do with it.
The county CR requires 1 acre minimum, and it's more about, I think, the lot average or minimum being 200 feet rather than only 100 feet under the proposed county ag 2.
So my question is, given Lou's good discussion, is if we supported going to ag, that gives them a little more flexibility to
Quite a
do
bit more
what they want to
flexibility.
do
Yes.
without necessarily having to approve the residential overlay.
Well, yeah.
So, are we, I'm a little fuzzy. They can do 3 lots, or to do 3 lots, they need a residential overlay? Because I was making my argument on the basis of 3 lots, and I'm not sure whether it's,
Yeah, when I read it, I think it said greater than 3 lots, you needed the
That's the way it
residential
reads it.
overlay.
okay,
Yeah.
all right, that's my recollection.
I think,
just
yeah,
don't
but
trust my recollections always.
No subdivisions totaling more than 3 lots.
Yeah, okay.
So maybe we've got consensus on the RRO, sounds like. Now, the zoning, yeah, we can, I'm wondering about the zoning itself, because I can't find event center in our table of uses under the ag zoning district. So if from that point of view, what kind of a use, I'm looking at recreation, I'm looking at public and quasi-public, I'm looking at business.
I believe there is a use like that.
Well, that's what I could be blind. Could be just missing it. Outdoor commercial recreation enterprise?
That's it.
Well, there's an outdoor and indoor, but anyway.
And that's what they also,
Private
what the
indoor
county
development.
also calls it, is outdoor.
Private indoor development is a conditional use in the ag.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, but
So-
I was missing it, yeah. I
Right,
was.
so,
yeah.
but that's
That-
also helpful.
That enables it,
because
yeah.
That's another reason to say, don't protest the rezoning, protest the RRO. And if nothing else, that will raise the questions
Yeah.
of little lots in the middle of nowhere.
Marcus, do you know if the previous split zoning was along the same line, or is that a new boundary?
I assume that it is not, because the boundary, the division before was 6 acres. It was the western 6 acres.
So it would have
Yeah,
been further
probably
to
here.
the west then?
Correct.
Okay.
That is what I'm speculating, but I've never seen a map.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just, because when I pull up the flood zone and overlay this in the county's GIS, the flood zone is further to the west.
And it's,
So are we basically allowing for what would be the alignment of the conservation zone with the flood zone to be shrunk to some extent?
and it's possible that if you're thinking about wanting to protect that flood zone, perhaps that middle option of contingent upon specific concerns, where you might say, we feel that the demarcation between the CR and the Ag 2 should be reflective of, I would suggest, the proposed boundary between the floodplain and the non-floodplain, because they could be planning to modify the topography. And if you want to allow them to modify the topography, that would be, I think, within your purview to say, we don't want you to modify the topography, and therefore we think that the boundary should be where the current floodplain boundary is. But again, that's all speculation on a site plan that we're not really supposed to be looking at.
So that contingency language would be part of the rezoning
Correct.
case between the two cases.
Yeah, so what I
Which I
just
kinda
jotted
like.
down there, under option B, forward the case with the recommendation to defeat a resolution of protest, provided the boundary of the district aligns with the floodplain, or something along those lines, doesn't infringe on the floodplain.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of how Marcus was wording this in terms of whether or not they modify it. So, yeah, I mean, the issue would be that it
Well, if they modify it so that it doesn't, then it
changes the floodplain.
meets our
so,
criteria, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it does.
I'm trying to think of a way to make it a little fuzzier. That is, my main concern is that we not be, that we make the point that we're concerned about where that line is.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think, going back to goals in the comp plan, that the idea would be that CR or CRE zone would correspond to flood protection
Yeah.
concerns, so.
Can't quite tell from this photograph.
Can we say that we'll approve it contingent on this county providing further details on the relation of the zoning district boundary to the floodplain?
Can you say that again?
I said, can we approve it contingent on the county providing further information to the city council on the relationship of the boundary of the zoning district with the floodplain? Something along those lines. In other words,
That might work.
we're concerned about,
Because the city
Yeah.
council is the one that's going to
Right.
make the vote.
And we
that
can't answer these
information could
questions
be
tonight.
obtained in time for the council, and that puts the issue on the table.
So contingent upon determining the relationship between the zoning boundary.
Correct.
In relation to the current and
or
future.
yeah,
Okay.
yes.
So that city council would then know, are they attempting to protect the current floodplain boundary, or are they going to modify it and this boundary is going to protect the future floodplain boundary? Or is it something in between where it's just kind of in the area, but there wasn't really a conscious effort to say it's protecting the boundary?
Yeah, but the good thing about what Tyler was wording is it's contingent on the information being provided, not on what the information says.
Correct.
we're in effect leaving that question up to council based on the information.
Right, because we
get.
can't answer it tonight, right?
But we want
Yeah.
them to have that information. And that also brings up the question of where this line's going to be.
It looks like this is actually called a drainage ditch, which would mean that it's in a draining ditch district, which has its own group of people. And they must have all kinds of rules about what happens along the drainage ditch, including changing the topography.
Probably
Yeah, I
true.
think changing the topography is going to be,
Yeah, that would have to go through
Problematic.
a lot more.
yeah. But having information about how this line relates to that, finesses that, which, because the council has the information, and maybe that information will actually include drainage ditch information.
Yeah, I like that idea.
I will also mention that the major development review process includes an external review by all of the relevant agencies, which includes the drainage districts. So if they do have a problem with it, they would submit those comments to the subdivider and say, you need to do X, Y, Z.
Okay, so do we have consensus on the RRO that we'll adopt option C, recommendation to adopt a resolution of protest?
No.
Okay.
I'm just too fuzzy on it, too. Can I say how I would vote?
Sure.
I would abstain because I'm too fuzzy on what it means, on what all's happening.
I don't know what
throughout
that
the
does
process.
to our quorum.
Well,
I think we're still okay.
Yeah, you're still okay.
Yeah,
an abstention can be within the quorum.
yeah, that's what I think, yeah.
It won't hurt it.
What about the issue of the second one, the zoning itself, forward with a recommendation to defeat a resolution of protest, and here's the language that I just jotted down, contingent on the county providing the city council with further information on how the ag district's eastern boundary relates to the western boundary of the floodplain.
Very good.
May I repeat it back?
Sure.
Okay. Contingent upon the county providing city council with further information on how the agricultural district's eastern boundary relates to the western boundary of the floodplain.
Exactly.
Okay.
Okay.
So it's just going to be two different things?
It's going to be two motions. So I'm happy to entertain said motions. Mr. Ackerson, you could take the first one. I can make the second motion since I wrote it. I usually don't, but I can.
Which the
It's-
first, the first one's the
Yeah, the
Yeah.
931.
regarding case CZZBA-931-AM-19, propose a resolution of protest
Suppose we recommend the city council
to city
adopt.
council
Yeah.
to adopt a resolution of protest.
Okay. There's a motion by Mr. Ackerson,
Second.
second by Ms. Yu. And when you're ready on that, we'll do a roll call vote.
Mr. Ackerson,
Yes.
Ms. Billman,
Yes.
Mr. Fitch,
Yes?
Mr. Hopkins,
Yes.
and Ms. Yu,
Yes.
and am I missing somebody?
I think that
Yeah.
Mr. Allred.
Mr. Allred. You know, we must have printed off an older version because, like, hey, they're not on here. Okay.
Yes.
And you said yes?
Yes.
All right, that motion passes. And I'll move the second one so that I can again reiterate the language. I move we send CCZBA 934 AM 19 to the City Council with a recommendation to defeat a resolution of protest contingent on the county providing the City Council with further information on how the agricultural district eastern boundary relates to the western boundary of the floodplain.
Second.
Second by Mr. Hopkins, motion by Mr. Fitch. And another roll call when you're ready.
Okay. Mr. Allred,
Yes.
Ms. Yu,
Yes.
Mr. Fitch,
Yes?
Ms. Billman,
Okay.
Mr. Ackerson,
Aye, aye.
and Mr. Hopkins.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it is getting late. That motion passes. Do we have, is that the 21st again? As
That is, yeah.
mentioned? Yeah. Okay, not the 18th, which is a Friday. So that's it for our business tonight. We do have audience participation, but we'll forego it. Staff report?
There is none.
There is no staff report, no study session. Therefore, we're adjourned.